Okay, this is David, and this will be part 12. Part 11 was kind of abruptly cut off. Actually, I made some mistakes in it, so I cut off the end myself. Anyway, we were talking about uh, when we're defending, when we have opened for a raise, we're defending against a 3-bet. When it's a normal 3-bet, uh, if we can withstand 3-bet it with about a third of our range, we'll be just fine. We can do it with these premium combinations, which add up to about 34 combinations. However, when our opponent makes a smaller 3-bet, like a min raise or something, because he's getting a better price on his bluff, he forces us to defend a bigger portion of our range. For that reason, when we're creating our polarized range, I advise keeping some of the stronger medium strength hands in there, because we're going to have to actually defend uh, with about even more hands out of here if we're 4-betting, and about 22 more hands if we're flatting. Now, I have these suggestions as for the hands that we add to our range when doing that. So what we'll do is, in addition to these premium, we'll open up with ace queen, ace jack suited, and we'll open up with pocket jacks about 1/3 of the time. And the way I do that is I do it when the two jacks are the same color, if I have diamonds and hearts or clubs spades. So anyway, these are hands that are almost good enough to stand up to a 3-bet, but not quite. Okay, with these hands, if your opponent makes a normal size 3-bet, you're generally bet, and there are other callers you may call, or if he makes a much smaller than ordinary 3-bet, you may go ahead and call with these. These are also good candidates to use for your 4-bet bluffing, which you may use against certain opponents. But as I said in the last video, in lower limit online games and also in live games, your opponents are not 3-betting you nearly the optimal amount. They're not exploiting your tendencies. So you can exploit them by never 4-bet bluffing. So it should be a rare occasion that you 4-bet bluff, and most of your 4-bets should be for value. Even if it's not optimal, that's the way that you exploit your opponents. Now, this gives us a total of 56 hands right now in our target 100 hand range. I'm saying target 100 hands because the premium hands we want to comprise 1/3 of our range, and this is about a third of 100, so we need about 56 more. This adds 22, so now we have 44 left. This gets us up to 56. Okay, so anyway, what are the candidates for inclusion among the other 44 hands? Now, I already mentioned that we want to get rid of most of these medium strength hands. Okay, the pocket pairs, the bigger suited Broadways. We don't want those in our range if we're going to have a range of premium hands, limping hands, and then bluff raises, because we don't want to be faced against an aggressive 3-better with big pets going into the pot when we're holding a medium strength hand. We're at a bigger disadvantage if we have that, as we said in video number 7, which you may review if you don't understand that. We'd rather have a polarized range so that we welcome the big bets when we're strong and we easily get away from the big bets when we're weak. Okay, so now we're trying to pick out 44 hands to add to our range, and what are they going to include? Well, here's what the candidates are going to be. Okay, these are hands that are almost good enough to limp in with, but not quite. Now, I should add that we're talking about when you are first in the pot, when they have not been limpers. Okay, the small suited aces are almost good enough to limp, but not quite. The big offsuit Broadways, those are a special case. I'll explain those, but I don't really like those for limping or for raising. Your small pocket pairs, those that are not good enough to limp. We're talking about those that are below pocket sevens. And we're talking about the suited connectors and 1-gaps. Okay, all of these hands are not good enough to limp in with if nobody is yet in the pot. Okay, these hands, when they're drawing hands, they want lots of plays in the pot so you have good implied odds. When you're first in the pot, they need help. And that help either comes from being in position or having the initiative. Okay, so if you're going to play these, open them for a raise. Okay, now I'm going to explain which ones I think are good and which ones are not. Okay, now As I said, when a couple of people have limped in, you can over-limp with your suited aces, your small pocket pairs, and your suited connectors and one gappers. So when there are limpers, we're going to pick out different hands to use for our bluff raises. And they will come, again, from the best of the hands that we normally fold. Look at the best of the hands that you normally fold, and those are the ones you bluff raise with. And Sklansky explains a little bit about that in No Limit Hold'em Theory and Practice. But that's the way you do it. Right now, let's look at these candidates. Small suited aces. Okay, I recommend against bluff raising with small suited aces and the big offsuit Broadway for the reason that they're not as good as they appear when you look on PokerStove. PokerStove, when they list looks at the hands, it's not really a weighted average that you're seeing. Okay, these hands will win lots of pots, but they'll win lots of small pots. If money starts going in post flop, these are dominated hands. If you're opening up with ace 4 suited, you're going to have people calling you in position with ace 10, jack, ace queen, hands like that. So when an ace flops, you're not in good shape. Same thing with the big offsuit Broadways. You know, king jack offsuit, king 10 offsuit, things like that. These hands are best to stay away from. The time that you raise with these hands is when you're in position. When you're in late position, you're one off the button, or you're on the button, you're first in, or there's been one or two limpers. Then these are good bluffs. Also may be good hands to use as bluff 3-bets when somebody has raised in early position. But they are not good bluff raises coming in from early position. Now, that leaves us with these two groups, the small pocket pairs and the suited connectors and gappers. The small pocket pairs, these are actually a good group to open raise with in the early position if you would otherwise fold them for weaker players. For weaker players, this is a good group. And the reason is a weaker player is not very good post-flop. He can't read his opponent. So generally, if he gets called, he's going to make one continuation bet at the pot. But if he gets called and he doesn't make a set on the turn or something, he's going to have to throw his hand away. And you can gladly do that with pocket pairs. Okay, they're either going to make the set or they're not. You know, you can make one stab at the pot, and if you're not improved on the turn, you can throw them away. So they're actually very good for weaker players. If you're a more sophisticated player who makes good reads on your opponent and who looks at good boards to make multiple barrel bluffs with, if you're a player who knows when to look to shove it all in on very good draws, then suited connectors and one gappers are a much better group of hands to use than small pocket pairs. And the reason is because they give you more opportunities to barrel post-flop. When you make your continuation bet and get called, generally you don't want to make another bet on the turn unless you improve. Okay, and these offer lots of room to improve and pick up equity. You can flop one pair and pick up a second pair on the turn. You can flop a gut shot with a backdoor flush draw and then pick up the flush draw on the turn. You can flop a gut shot that improves to an open-ender. There are all sorts of ways that suited connectors and gappers can improve on the turn, but these are not good enough to limp in with. Okay, they are good. You need that extra little oomph, and that comes from the initiative you get from being the pre-flop raiser. That gives you a little extra something. If you're first in the pot and you're not going to raise, you should have other limpers in before you. Okay, that's all we're going to do right now. I'm going to show you how we now have a pretty good group here, and I'm going to show you which suited connectors and gappers are going to be good for inclusion here in the next video. That's all for right now.